This is a prophetic word for the Middle East and the nations of the world. There is a serious situation coming on the horizon. Jeremiah 25:32 says, "Look, disaster is spreading from nation to nation. A mighty storm is rising from the ends of the earth." The prophet Jeremiah predicted a time of the end when God's wrath would be poured out on all the nations of the earth for man's sin, disobedience, and unrighteousness. Daniel also spoke of the time of the end. The Apostle Peter said in 2 Peter 3:4, "There shall come a time in the last days, scoffers, following their own evil desires. They will say, 'Where is this coming he has promised?' Ever since our fathers died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of creation." Paul said, "In the last days, perilous times shall come." Christ's disciples also asked him about the end of the world. Has this time come? Are we living in the last days? And how can we be sure? In Matthew 24:4-14, Jesus gives us the signs that will characterize the whole course of the last days and would intensify as the end draws nearer. As we look at events in the world today, we realize that the world is changing. Something is wrong, terribly wrong. We are warned in both the Old and New Testament of prophetic events that would characterize the end of mankind or the end of the age. In Romans 8:22, Paul states, "We know that the whole creation has been groaning, as in the pain of childbirth, right up to the present time." God has purposed that nature itself will be redeemed and recreated. The world is filled with wars, turmoil, confusion. While men have created many amazing technological inventions, they cannot create peace. Scientists have unleashed the power of the atom, but is powerless unleash peace on the earth. In Jeremiah 25:15-38, Jeremiah foresees a time in the distant future when God would release his wrath on all mankind because of their unfaithfulness, sin, and unrighteousness. Verse 33 says, "At that time, those slain by the Lord will be everywhere, from one end of the earth to the other. They will not be mourned for or gathered or buried, but will be like refuse lying on the ground." This part of Jeremiah 25 prophecy has not yet been fulfilled. In Jeremiah 25:13, "I will bring upon that land all the things I have spoken against it, all that are written in this book and prophesied by Jeremiah." Jeremiah had preached earnestly for 23 years. His prophetic ministry spanned the time of three kings: King Hosea, King Ahaz, and King Jehoiakim. Jehovah had sent all his servants, the prophet, to the children of Israel because of their idolatry, as representatives of all their sins. Daniel, Ezekiel, Uriah, and Jeremiah. But the people had not listened. Thus, because of their disobedience, God would allow the Babylonian army to take them captives. In verse 9, "I will summon all the people of the north, my servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and I will bring them against all this land and its inhabitants, and against all the surrounding nations. I will completely destroy them and make them an object of horror and scorn and everlasting ruin." The people had repeatedly rejected God's warning. God would use Nebuchadnezzar, unconsciously an unbeliever, as an instrument to fulfill his design by which he would execute divine punishment on Judah. We see here that God uses people, nations, or whatever pleases him to bring divine punishment to whom or whatever he wishes to accomplish. Egypt was defeated by Babylon in the Battle of Carchemish in 605 BC. That same year, Nebuchadnezzar's army invaded Palestine, captured Jerusalem, and deported some of Jerusalem's choicest youth to Babylon, among whom was Daniel and his 3 friends. In 597 AD, a second campaign took place. 10,000 captives were taken to Babylon, among whom was Ezekiel the prophet. The final devastation of Jerusalem, the temple, and the entire kingdom of Judah took place in 586 BC. The first part of this prophecy was fulfilled in 605 BC, an important date because Nebuchadnezzar's reign marked the beginning of 4 successive kingdoms that would have world dominion. Babylon the Great represented the head of gold, Medo-Persia the chest of silver, Greece the thighs of bronze, Rome the legs of iron, and the legs of iron and clay divided Europe. The songs of joy and gladness would cease in the nation. The whole country would become a desolate wasteland when Babylon was finished. One of these days, because of the sinfulness and unrighteousness of man, God is going to put an end to life on this planet as we know it. Just as he had allowed Judah to go into captivity, he's going to bring an end to this old world of sin. Jeremiah 4:8 says, "You, Lord, have spoken, and you will not relent. You have decided and will not turn back." Whatever is spoken in the word of God must come to pass. There is a serious situation coming on the horizon. Jeremiah 25 says, "Look, disaster is spreading from nation to nation. A mighty storm is rising from the ends of the earth." God would allow Judah to go to Babylon for 70 years. Why 70 years? Because the people had failed to observe God's righteous law of the Sabbath rest for the land. God had declared that every 7 years the land was to remain fallow. The people were not to sow their fruits or prune their vineyards. In the 490 years time period between the ascension of King Saul and the Babylonian captivity, Israel did not observe the commanded Sabbath for the land. Therefore, the 70 years Babylonian captivity promised by Jeremiah allowed the land to enjoy its sabbatical rest. They would go to Babylon for 70 years, which began in the 4th year of Jehoiakim in 605 BC and continued until the first return of the exile in 538 BC following Cyrus' decree in Isreal 1:1. Daniel's 70 prophetic weeks are based on the 70 years of this captivity, which was the first year of King Nebuchadnezzar's reign, which gives Jeremiah chapter 25, 15 to 38 an end-time prophetic implication. Jeremiah was told to take the cup of wine filled with God's wrath and make all the nations to whom he was sent drink it. This is a prophetic word for the Middle East and the nations of the world.